Alright, so that was the most anticlimactic engine popping ever. But as you can see, core support was damaged. I've had to kind of like manually edge this back in. We'll kind of swoop over the other side here. So this is what I've been rolling with, is the core support is not even really attached. So, I mean, I'm going to just try and do a bolt job. But what this does, so the core support is this vertical, and then extends over to here, but it's all welded. It's like a bead weld. So it's kind of hard to see, but you know, there's no nuts and bolts. So I can't really replace this unless I'm get good at welding, which I am not going to do. So what I did last night before I went to sleep was I went to, so I went and got, this was my original air box. As you can see, this is all the Blue Devil from like the March, I think it was, March or April head gasket repair job I did. And it's kind of funny, this Blue Devil was spraying. I didn't realize how important a radiator cap was. Never open a radiator cap when the engine is hot. This has been cooled off for some time. I actually kind of rinsed the engine off here at the car wash. But this is basically a pressure relief valve. Now this one's in decent shape. As you can see, the rubber is not like what happened to the original one. It was kind of pressed out. I didn't think nothing of it. I'm like, oh, it's just a radiator cap. Well, this is a pressure relief valve that maintains a certain pressure. See this little kind of lifty thing here? And what was happening is that rubber was spread out, and I didn't realize that I would hear it while I was driving, but it was literally just spraying Blue Devil all over this. And so I ended up kind of shortly after that, I'm like, hey, let's put on an aftermarket intake, because my thoughts were this resonator is big and bulky, it's kind of ugly, it obscures most of the engine, because I had spent probably 2 sessions, a couple hours each session, just detailing the engine by hand. And then of course Blue Devil happened, and got all over the engine again. I'm like, well, fuck this goddamn resonator. I'm more interested in removing that, putting in an aftermarket air intake, and that way I can detail the engine, and when I'm on the road, if I have any type of a mishap, I can pop the hood and boom, I'm in the engine. I know I detailed it. I can look and be like, oh, okay, that's got a drip, that's got a drip. So as my plan was to make it very easy to troubleshoot on the road. But in my process, I've discovered several things about this little setup. Let's just talk about the hatchet job I did, though. So this is the air cleaner. Okay, I'm not going to take it off because I fucking installed this nice and firm. Basically comes up through the throttle body. There's a seal around the throttle body. Comes up, this is, I believe, I don't know if that's your mass airflow sensor or just air intake temperature. I think mass airflow might actually be underneath. To be quite honest, I don't know what the fuck the mass airflow is, but it's somewhere around there. But this is where it enters the engine, and so it comes up in here. There's that little sensor. There's a filter on top, and then there's a bottom chamber that goes to this resonator. Well, I was at the junkyard today, and someone had actually cut like probably that much of this thing off, and I was able to look in there, and this like air comes into the intake, and this is called a resonator. So the cool air, you'll notice the holes right here. So it's farthest from the engine, no heat. The air is coming whoosh, kind of up to the wheel well, comes right into there from the farthest point from the engine, as can be from, while being in the engine still. And then as it comes in, it's weird. I'll do my best to, kind of paint a picture here, but it kind of comes down. There's a couple of like dud air pathways that just, kind of funnel some air in there, and then there's another one that comes over here, and then it comes up and over and into the intake chamber, or the airbox chamber, up through the filter, over, down, past the sensor, in through the throttle body. I don't know what this one does. I imagine it's a vent of some sort for the top of the valve cover area there. But at any rate, I'm like, I'll just take the resonator out. The resonator is an interesting piece. It's part of the emission setup, and what it does is somehow, I guess it changes the frequency or the resonance of the air that's coming in, so it's less turbulent, I guess. And I don't quite understand it, because you're driving 60 miles an hour and it's all this like just this noise, and so this kind of like, just like in the military, you make a lot of turns with any type of a fluid, which air is a fluid. It flows and assumes the shape of its container. And water is also a fluid. It flows and assumes the shape of its container. But water is also a liquid, whereas air is not a liquid. So they have similar characteristics like that. And so with a lot of changes, it changes the pressure of the air coming in. So it's not going to be 60 mile an hour air. I don't quite understand the whole frequency or toning down the frequency or something, and maybe I need to do a little bit more research. Maybe I'm getting that a little bit wrong, but basically chills the air out before going into here. What I did was, I didn't even have all the parts. I had a here, I'll show you. I had on a junkyard run, we kind of scored and found a pipe. I didn't know the first thing about intakes. So this pipe, whoop. All right. Now, it's supposed to have like a 90 degree too. So you take the air box off, this off, this off. You have a 90 degree that comes up and curves, that has a little receptacle for that little temperature sensor or whatever that is. And then one of these plugs into that. I don't exactly know how it's supposed to do, because I didn't do it right. Well, I didn't have that. I'm like, well, I want to get rid of that box. It doesn't really do anything. A long time ago, before I'd done my research. And so what I did was I took this out, left it at Shane's house, tow truck's house. Thank you, tow truck. For like 7 months. Kept this for some reason. Originally left the air filter in there, because I'm like, well, I don't have the ability to reposition that. And I said that's a sensor, so that'll definitely fuck with something. It didn't occur to me that all of this is gonna fuck with fucking sensors too. I'm like, oh no, as long as the sensor's still intact, all, changing everything else isn't gonna fuck with the sensor, but leaving the air filter in somehow would keep it the same. Anyways, my logic was fucked. So this was like 3 modifications later. First couple of installs wasn't a super secure seal. I had the air filter there and this air filter, which isn't even super clean. Like, it's dirtier now, but it wasn't much cleaner when I put it on. And so this thing was way over here, and I had to kind of cockeye this battery this way and kind of threw this whole zone off. We managed to get it in, but for a while I believe I was getting a lot of I guess what would be like a vacuum leak, because this isn't the right build. And so there was some loose shit going on. I was getting some codes, and I was weird idles and just kind of noise. I'd start it up and it would stutter a little bit and misfire. And of course, I researched or troubleshot every other system, because no, it couldn't be the air intake. And finally I said, well, fuck it, I'm going to take out that air filter. So I took out the air filter, left the air box, and just used this one for a while. And you know what? It eventually ran, like, I noticed a little bit of power. The engine sounded a little bit different, but it always kind of had like that, I don't know, I'd start it up and it would kind of like hesitate for like the first few pulses of the engine, and then I just tap the gas and it would kind of balance out. But I'd intermittent engine lights, and just weird engine sounds, idling, misfiring, weird shit like that. And of course, Still didn't occur to me it's the fucking intake. I consulted with some friends and like, well, the computer will readjust to adapt to the new, arrangement, but not without running a, I guess it's a dyno. Basically, you retune your engine. So, I want to kind of close this air intake thing. Oh, but there's another funny thing. So, thanks to Charles Sandifer, who towed me from Everett to Tacoma, he landed me with some linerless rubber splicing tape. Part of my troubleshooting yielded some new information as well. I didn't realize how sensitive the engine wiring was to heat. And it makes perfect sense. You increase heat, you increase resistance. When you increase resistance, electronics run, let's call it slower. There's more resistance to electronics flow. Now, any car with a computer, and this is kind of where this comes full circle. I'm glad I made all these mistakes. So this was my solution before finally last night removing the goddamn intake, is I coated this thing in linerless rubber splicing tape and then wrapped it in high temperature, like I think it goes upwards of 300 degrees, 280 degrees, electrical tape. I didn't realize they made high temperature electrical tape. And so this linerless rubber splicing tape is almost like a spongy, rubbery consistency. And what you do is you kind of wrap electrical wiring that's exposed. You wrap it in this linerless rubber splicing tape, and it's kind of like elastic. It's a little bit sticky, it's kind of tacky, but it won't hold by itself. So then you really securely wrap it with the high temperature electrical tape, and what you basically create is almost an airtight seal. So any exposed wires, or when you're doing lugs, wrap it with the linerless rubber splicing tape. High temperature electrical, do a real good job, take your time. And what you get is it makes your wiring more heat resistant. Also, by making it, I don't know if it's airtight, but it's pretty goddamn close. And if you do it right, it is. If it's airtight, air is what creates oxidation in your copper wiring. So when your copper wiring is turning green and dusty, that's because it's been oxidized. So anywhere that copper wire is exposed, you either want to like spray it with that spray that, kind of inhibits corrosion. Drop some solder on it. What are some of the other things? Oh, they got that spray rubber shit, the electrical and rubber splicing. But when you get to the lugs you can do because you can wrap it around the lug. But what about when your terminals in the, for instance, we're going to flip this back around, like with the battery, which I haven't done this, but I have all new copper wiring courtesy of Charles Sandifer. So really good commercial grade copper wiring. So I regrounded the engine in 3 places. Grounding, we'll talk about grounding later. AutoZone and O'Reilly's have these nickel, it's like a nickel battery post terminal connector thingy dob. So usually you get those lead ones, and you undo it a couple times and the lead starts to warp, and these will warp as well, but they're a little more durable, and they're nickel plated, so they're not going to corrode. Now this exposure will eventually start to corrode, but this is fucking thick ass burly motherfucking wire. So, and this I had to fucking hatchet job these too because they did not fit. I could not figure out how to get these goddamn things around, so I had to chop them up. And then this style I really like because whenever you're doing like audio system shit, or like let's say you need to disconnect the battery, instead of removing this whole thing because this wears out the posts, constantly taking them on and putting them off, and every time you tighten it, these warp a little bit more. As you can see, it's kind of starting to get a little bit bendy there, but I got a really good seal. And every time I take one of these off, I either get a file or some of that Scotch Red pads, and I don't want to say burred up, but I just kind of marred up get it nice and fresh looking. That way you always have a good connection. Every time, if you just, it's basically a best practice. Anytime you do anything electrical with the battery, always just clean your terminals, double check your grounds, make sure nothing's loose. Anything that's loose will eventually create problems. And all of this is going to tie into the goddamn computer, because that's the big lesson here. So, God, I'm so bad at fucking sequence. But we'll just go here because I'm looking at it. ADD DI wire, bitches. So this is my original. I've had this battery for like 6 years now. It's still going strong. O'Reilly's tried to tell me it wasn't because they wanted me to buy a battery. So in all of these modifications, I had basically gotten rid of or misplaced my, it's basically half a battery box. There was also a black case around this. And then there's it's basically a screw comes down with a plate that comes across and another screw to hold the battery firm. I never really thought about keeping the battery stationary and firm. Once the battery starts jostling around, these are going to get loose, okay? There's electrolytic solution in there. Now, it's already, you got the car being bumpy. Now, if this thing's all bumping around, you got this electrolytic solution sloshing around. It's just not the best environment for electrical. Electrical, you want stable. You don't want large fluctuations anywhere. And so things like, I didn't even think about this, just securing your battery. So I basically bolted down this little box, put some rubber beneath that, put some new rubber that I had in the car, thank you, tow truck, beneath this because I'm missing the original metal that was there because I got rid of it. And I went to the junkyard. I got all new fasteners because my airbox, a lot of those fasteners had snapped, so I didn't have a good seal. I got a nice air filter. So for 20 something bucks, I got this whole box with the sensor, with the filter, all the nuts and bolts. There's like a little, you can't really see it so well, but there's like a little rubber, I guess, sleeve that joins these two units. I got that. I got, what else did I get while I was there today? Oh, I kind of snuck one of those. These, I bought 4 of these already, $8 a pop. So now I just grab them every time I'm there. Anytime I see a radiator cap now, and I realize they're also not super cheap. And it's a critical item. Don't think, oh, it's just a radiator cap. Simple little things that you don't think about. Alright, this motherfucker, fuck you. The seal there, the throttle body seal, I didn't have a clamp on it for some time. I'm like, oh, I'm missing 3 screws, no big deal. Well, so what happens, these subtle changes in the norm. So this computer is set up to read all of these sensors. There's sensors there's a sensor under there. Those are sensors. That's an O2 sensor on the exhaust manifold with a crack in it. So that still sends some interesting signals to the computer. So any one change, no matter how minute or small you may think it is, changes one parameter, and what that does is sends a little message to the computer. The computer says, oh, air intake temperature is high. So if your air going into the engine is hot, it's going to adjust probably, I have no fucking clue what it's going to adjust. Oh, it'll probably adjust the throttle. So your fuel air mixture, if you don't want hot air going into the engine, you want cooler air going into the engine. Cooler air, because when air is warm, it expands. Less oxygen in the combustion chamber. When air is cold, it contracts. More oxygen in the combustion chamber. Adjust fuel air ratio needs to be maintained for certain RPMs. So all these things come together in that computer, and it's sending signal, more coolant, Well, the thermostat's more of a, it's not really so much computerized, it's more temperature, and it's just going to do its own thing. Um, but, the coolant usually cycles through the heater core, and maybe somewhere over here it opens a valve. Actually, I don't have a fucking clue. I'm just talking out my ass. But, just an idea. The spark. So, if you've got unburned fuel, all right, so that's going to be basically be coating because you're getting too much fuel in there. I don't exactly know that it increases electrical current to the coils, but I imagine that it would. It's going to adjust some parameter. Now, the reason why I'm fucking doing this tutorial, I don't know shit, is because it's not that hard to kind of think about these things, and even if you're not mechanically inclined, grab a YouTube, Google the symptoms. Rough idle, hesitating 0 to 30 on the acceleration. Well, I mean, that's too many words, but just any symptom that you have, Google it, watch a few videos, get informed. In the beginning, it seems overwhelming, but you don't forget these things because this is your car and you need it to run. You want to save money. And so even if you're not going to work on the car yourself, Google these symptoms. Any change that you make to the engine, remember it. And if you're not getting any bites from just Googling the symptoms, then Google the adjustment that you made. Let's say you put in a new brand of air filter. So Google that air filter and say, let's say the symptoms is rough idle. And the only thing that you changed recently was you bought a different brand of air filter than you normally do. So let's say Bosch air filter 2005 Civic rough idle. And so you basically start to compile all of this data yourself, and eventually you're going to hit a video that's going to resonate with you. Like, oh, that seems right. Google a couple more now that you know what it is, and let's say it's that air filter allows too much airflow. It's a recurring problem. So Google that air filter and get a couple more opinions just to make sure, because you might get lucky once and one guy agrees with you. That air filter's fucked, but 17 other people say it's not the air filter, it's a sensor that's going bad. So, what I want to do with these tutorials or these these fucking stumble tutorials where, I always allow the mistakes to be evident, is don't be afraid of, doing a little homework. If anything, you're not making the repair yourself, you're now going to that mechanic armed with a little more information, and you can do a couple things with that. You can go to the mechanic and say, I know this, I know this, I know this, I know that. And it helps the mechanic get started. But what you've also done is let the mechanic know that you know what the fuck you're doing. And, sometimes it might be good when vetting new mechanics to not let them know what you know. Take it in, have them do a troubleshooting, tell him the symptoms, and see what he comes back with. For instance, mechanics love, let's say you get milk shaking your engine. You take it to any mechanic, I'm 90% sure. I'm 100% sure that 90% of them will come back rather quickly, or they might even pause and give it a day and say, yeah, we did a bunch of troubleshooting. No, you didn't. You popped the oil cap, saw milkshake, and said, $2,500 repair, yeah! And that's the thing is, I actually, when I was going through mine, I brought it to a couple mechanics, and they went right to head gasket repair. We're going to have to, new gasket, we're going to have to fucking bore your heads. Yeah, it's going to be about $2,500. And I did a $65 Blue Devil, which I'm still running on that. If you can go to your mechanic and you already know this information, and that mechanic comes back with, oh, head gasket. The thing about the milkshake in the engine, that symptom has 5 other causes that are like less than $100 to fix. Well, ish. And I'm just generalizing, because that gasket's the pinnacle of that symptom's evolution. So what I've learned, especially with the Civic, this car's very easy to work on. Parts are very attainable. It's the most stolen car in the world. Is when you have a symptom, don't jump at the first malady that you encounter. Google that symptom a few more times. Find out, try and work around to make sure that you're troubleshooting that right, because there's this, I guess this operational flaw where people just, it's called throwing parts at the problem. And what that means is, okay, the first bite or nab you get, okay, it's an air filter, let's just replace the air filter. Still didn't fix the problem. Okay, let's replace the sensor. Didn't fix the problem. Let's replace the hoses. Didn't fix the problem. Turns out, your rear left tire needed more air. You know what I mean? And it's totally an exaggeration, but as this process unfolds, in the beginning, you're going to be, it could be overwhelming because you're still building your troubleshooting library of references. And what's happened with me is I can very quickly just go to the problem right now. And that's priceless, because at this point I pretty much repaired everything on this car, without going into the cylinders yet. And so what you can do is, spend some time each time watching some tutorials, get your flow. There's a series that I did a while back where I talk about how to choose the tutorials that work for you. I like a little bit of comedy. I like the ones that are a little bit real. I like the ones where they fuck up and say, oops, well, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Because it's human. It's not perfect. And for me, that was more relatable because, oh, he just fucked up on TV. I'm going to fuck up on TV. And it makes people maybe a little less hesitant to troubleshoot themselves. If you're not going to do the work yourself, that's fine. Go into the mechanic armed with knowledge. And I like the idea of not telling the mechanic in the beginning, especially, when you're vetting new mechanics. Just know what you know, see what he says the problem is. Don't do the repair right away. Go home, Google it yourself. Okay, there's definitely some, there's definitely some weight here to what he's saying, but he's not considering this, and that. And the other thing I've discovered is any tutorial that you watch is missing about 37, specific phenomena that are occurring in your particular situation that are not occurring in that tutorial. And so that's why it's a little tricky is, there's so many systems in a car, there's so many things, especially with computers, that can, affect systems that seem unrelated. You don't even think about it, but like me fucking with that air intake and removing that resonator, when I put that back on and I took my time and made sure every screw was tight, made sure every seal was secure, took my time reinstalling the battery, securing the battery, making sure all the connections were tight. The fucking, I didn't always put all the screws back in those resonator boxes, and when they connect to the engine, they connect with rubber grommets. And so what was happening is the whole box would vibrate. And I didn't think nothing of it. Well, as the box is vibrating, it's doing a couple things. First off, the resonator is de-resonating that air going in, and the box banging around is re-resonating it. So you're kind of diffusing the effectiveness of the resonator. And not just that, everything's coming loose. And so I did all these things, these mistakes that I made. I'm just laughing at it right now. Because going back, how many people were like, Joel, don't do that. Joel, don't do that. Joel, don't do that. Like, I'm going to do that. Like, Joel, don't fucking do that. I'm going to do that. And, it takes 6 months for that mistake to finally dawn on me. Why the fuck did I do that? And I always give credit to the people that said, don't do that. I call them back up and I tell them and I give them that little moment, because They tried to warn me, but you know what? I like to learn the hard way with the car. If I have an idea and someone says don't do it, and I just don't do it, then I'll never know what happens if I do it. And for me, I learn, I think, much better by making the mistake and having the calamity and breaking down on the freeway because I ran out of gas and it wasn't an electrical problem. That one I'm never going to live down. That was fucking hilarious. I mean, I'm laughing now, but that was the moment that I broke down, that I gave up, that I screamed like a bitch in the car and fucking sent messages out. I'm not a fucking mechanic. I'm not a texter. I'm a goddamn DJ and dancer. I'm a fucking artist. I make pretty things happen. I'm tired of goddamn working on cars. Just fucking throwing a temper tantrum, and I ran out of fucking gas. You know, all because all the electrical problems that ensued because I decided to move the fuse box and all these unshielded cables. And I decided to splice fucking battery cables with fucking car audio cables. You know, all these little things that you think are going to be fine, well, they're not. You know, spark plugs need to be a certain torque. Spark plug cables need to be in a certain order from the distributors. I went to a friend's expedition the other day. He had an inverter in the engine compartment, laying on like a grocery bag, secured by a wire that he strung between two screws in the engine. And then the positive and negative coming off of this inverter was a fully exposed copper wire. It was a rigid wire that he wedged into the little screw connectors for the inverter and went to the battery loosely. The battery had massive amounts of flaking of the copper wire. The copper wire was brown and not bright copper. Green dust was just clouding off of it, so major oxidation. His grounds were loose, like finger loose. One of the spark plug cables was half off. And I'm like, I'm in his engine. This is like a week ago. I'm like, fuck it. I've never worked on another car other than Civic. I'm going to just see if I can troubleshoot this one. So I pulled out 4 of his 8 spark plugs in the V8. And of the 4 spark plugs, 3 of them were the same. One of them was dramatically different. All had massively different gaps. All had the same symptom of white scorching. So there definitely wasn't a coolant leak in that car, and I saw no coolant leaks. But because his electrical system was so shitty, and he had weird grounds everywhere, and he had, his car audio deck and his cigarette lighter were wired on constantly, as was the inverter. They never turned off. So no matter what, he always had a drain on his car, even when he wasn't driving it. Weird exposed wires. He never cleaned the battery cables, never tightened them. Oh yeah, the terminals were loose. The spark plug cables were all over the place. One of the spark plugs came out I basically just pulled the spark plug out. God, there were so many just red flags that I had learned from my car. And so I spent a whole day on his car because I was so excited to work on something else. I cleaned all the spark plugs, kind of re-gapped them to the best of my ability, re-grounded his engine in 3 places, got rid of the inverter, did lugs on all of his connections. You know, I did a really good job. Still didn't fix all the problems. But then he went in after me and troubleshot and found out that his spark plug cables were in the incorrect order. And plus there were 4 other spark plugs that were dirty as fuck and not gapped and probably mismatched. So it's like, you know, in your troubleshooting adventures, remember, the littlest thing does matter. But if you make a mistake with the littlest thing, don't sweat it. You know, as you drive your car, you start to become very tuned to the car's subtleties, like the way it's hitting bumps differently, the way the engine hums at 30 miles per hour differently. When you hit the gas, the responsiveness is changing. You know, you start to register these things over time, and I would say, you know, if you just do that for 6 months, you know, every day, you know, check your fluids, look under the car when you get out, notice when there's drips, pop the hood once in a while, look under there. Anytime you notice an irregularity, pop that hood. Look under there. Is something loose? Is something missing? When you were driving, you heard that clink. Was that a bolt coming off? And I would say give yourself 6 months of just being real diligent with that, and you'll find that you can troubleshoot and start repairing most of your own issues. I've probably saved, well, for instance, when I had the accident, I got my car back on the road for, I think, like $400, $500. All right, I was more damaged in that accident, I would say. Both cars were damaged, but I think I probably had the edge of the damage because he was on top of my car. I went nose down, he went up. The bill I got from that insurance company, which I haven't fucking dealt with that yet, is $4,700. Now, he tried to do the whole whiplash thing, and I spent a lot of time with the guy in the accident, and he was hamming it up. I mean, I obviously saw that. He wanted to get something out of it. But, dude, I'm sorry. We were going like 11 miles an hour. You know, he was crying and and I went up and I pulled him out of his car. Like, I didn't run, walked him to the side. I was terrified. You know, I knew that I was at fault, and I'm like, fuck, I don't have a car now. I'm a street walking homeless. But I stayed with him. I'm like, oh, he's fucking injured. I can't deal with that. That fucking sucks. And just the way he was hamming it up, I'm like, oh god, he's gonna milk the shit out of this. But you know, I didn't say anything. I stayed with him. I was authentic. I showed him my concern. He mellowed out, but I never got to see, you know, the damages. But I'm sure he got some medical out of that. But who knows? Let's just throw a ballpark out. $3,000 of that 4,700 was, you know, repairs. Probably 3,500. I got my car on the road for less than 500, but I scraped. Now, for the next 6 months, I had new problems every week from that. I misdiagnosed so many issues. That month that I was stranded by the side of the road was because I was hearing a sound that I assumed to be my transmission. And I didn't want to drive it because I'm like, oh fuck, if the transmission goes, I can't fucking fix that. And what it turned out to be was the refrigeration system that I didn't put back in. There was a metal tube that was rubbing against a belt. So that whole month that I was stranded, I probably could have been on the road fucking week 1. But I didn't know shit. I had no money. I had no transportation. You know, so even though that sucked, that was the birth of this knowledge pool that I have now. So this has been a really long tutorial, but what I want to do with these tutorials is teach people how to learn, teach people how to teach themselves. The same with the technology side. This time last year, I knew jack shit about auto mechanics and technology, but I realized I couldn't afford to pay someone else. And if I was going to do this, I couldn't rely on someone else to do that work that I don't want to do, because it's shitty work. No one wants to do it. And so what I had to do is, and I'm coming to the point of this process where I get to be artistic again, I had to prove to myself and show others, you know, I can do this. Look what I did. I'm a mechanic now, a damn good mechanic. I'm getting up in the tech world. I'm starting to figure out some really cool tech shit now. And anyone that knew me before is going to be like, their jaw's going to drop. They're like, holy shit, Joel, what language are you speaking? You know, I've stopped on the side of the road and troubleshot people's vehicles and got them going again on 2 occasions. I was very proud of that. Fucking boner. Fucking man. I was so excited. It feels good, you know, to be able to do that, to solve your own problems. And when you have the opportunity to help someone else and just feel that gratitude pouring out of them, and you get to sense, you know, how grateful they are and how much better their day was just because you happened to stop by. And that's powerful. That's a powerful feeling. So I don't regret any of this, but god damn it, I'm ready for some fucking artson. So, the next part of this little thing, I'm gonna flip this camera back around. 40 minutes, Jesus. So I got my little multi-tool here that I got from Walmart. This little guy, which I hooked up to my Halo ACD. Oh wait, you can't even see that. Halo AC/DC Volt. 58,800 milliwatt hours inverter, 65 watt inverter, so it can power AC. Dual 2.4 USB. Jump starter, that's where the cables go, and LED light, very bright. I use that to power this thing, and a multi-tool has basically a sander, and I used, this is like a little chiseler thing. It goes, oh, this fucking phone's about to die. And so what I did was here, I just went and washed my car real good because I know I'm going to be sanding it tonight. And I'm going to be prepping for the paint job. Kiki's getting her paint job finally. Got a bunch of paint. Found a local guy with Rust-Oleum 2X for $2.50 a can. Usually about $6. So I used the little scraper tool, and it's just an oscillating tool. And this thing just basically goes. So I went and kind of checked it out on some of the weather, you know, basically the caulking that I put around the windows, and did a really shitty job, and was able to scrape some of that off and scrape some of the imperfections off the metal. And then I grabbed the sander and tried it out, and it works. You know, I wanted to try it out, make sure it worked on the backup battery. And so I just kind of did some rough, you know, some buffing, and I grabbed a razor because my last paint job that I did really shitty, I had paint, you know, spatter all over the windows. So whenever you get paint on windows, a straight razor blade, and you just scrape. So I just scraped the whole window, basically circumference of the vehicle, because I had it on all the windows, you know. And so I'm prepping the car for tonight. I'm gonna have a heavy day of Instacart, which I need to start here real fast. I did that, you know. I got the engine nice and clean. The engine is running so smooth, so fucking smooth, so fucking smooth. Like armor all the interior, fucking clean the windows. You know, I was gonna vacuum. I still got a bunch of tokens, but instead I think I'm gonna go and make some money because I spent a lot of money. But you know, all this money was well spent. My new friend, my tech friend, took the hotspot that he sold me. Went to Cricket to get my 100 gigs for $90. We couldn't get the hotspot working, so he's going to troubleshoot that for me. If it doesn't work, he's going to give me my money back. He's fucking super cool, dude. I like this guy a lot. Hopefully he'll stick around and get involved. I'm kind of talking him into doing some streaming because he's going to teach me how to repair LCD screens. So we're going to exchange that. So anyways, Kiki's getting kind of clean again. I'm going to show you, because I think I have a little bit of power right now. Let's just go out back. What do I got? 3%. So basically I just went in and just did some burring just to kind of smooth it off. And then this is that really shitty weather stripping job. So I took the sander there. I mean, I'm going to go through the better sander. That little multi-tool is not the best sander, but it's good for scraping and shit. So yeah, tonight I'm going to go to the parking garage and we're going to do a oscillating sand job everywhere. And I'm just going to do the real good sanding tonight. I don't think we're going to get any of the paint tonight. And so I think in 2 days I'll have the paint. And so Kiki's going to be changed. I'll have a new bumper. So she will be almost factory again. And I'm very excited about that. Running smooth, no problems. This is why I'm excited. Art is upon me again. And I have a Surface now. Fucking, that's what my friend from Facebook Marketplace that's going to teach me how to do the LCDs. As it turns out, these Surfaces are fucking powerful. And my DJ friend Miguel Claudio was the guy, he was working on Windows phones when the Surface project came up, and he got transferred over to there, and that's where I think, I haven't talked to him in a couple years. It'd be nice to reunite with him, but I believe Miguel is the guy that orchestrated all the teams into creating the Surfaces, and they're fucking amazing machines. Oh my god, especially the new ones. I got an old one and I'm loving it. But they have a keyboard. So they're magnetic keyboards. They have a keyboard that's a fucking DJ keyboard. And I just realized when he told me that, I'm like, holy shit, these are fucking DJ controllers. So instead of having a big old janky laptop, you have a very power efficient, lightweight, portable fucking screen for your DJ controller, and they even have a keyboard that is basically mapped out like a set of turntables. And I just can't wait to show Hitmaster when he fucking. I don't think I'm gonna tell him about it before I show him, but I'm like, hey Jason, there's your shit. So I got a couple of those Surfaces, and anytime I have a DJ on, I'll fucking hand them a Surface all loaded up with their mappings and shit, and they just hook up their music. Because I'm gonna, all my videos, I'm gonna try and keep as much technology, like all the technology be like really streamlined, really clean, and so if I hand them a Surface and it's already loaded up, I think that'd be pretty pimp. But yeah, I'm real stoked about the next phase. So thank you. This is gonna probably have to be 5 videos. It's so fucking long. Yeah, wish me luck making money today. Wish me luck with that fucking hotspot. I need goddamn internet. I need the money from unemployment. Oh my god. I need a bed bath. I need to get an Airbnb. Yeah, there's still a lot of logistical shit I need to deal with, but just around the corner. Just around the corner, guys. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. And it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be way cool. Love you. Bitches.